next. Swamiji, my name is Shyam. So I have a question on the dark space example. So you mentioned that, to our limited senses, the universe is mostly darkness and it takes an object like a comet to reflect that light. So if I shift that analogy to the Atman or the self, I mean, it's beyond our limited senses to comprehend, our inner light, right? So do we need an object or a mirror to reflect that inner light?
Yes, that's a good question. And it's a good question because I've had the answers. That's why it's a good question. There was one of the oldest and most prestigious journals in philosophy is called Mind. It's published by Cambridge, I think, the philosophy department, Cambridge or Oxford. It's pretty old, more than 150 or 200 years old. So once in one of the articles, they had a very humorous section on ways to handle difficult questions. Philosophers, so when students ask questions to the professor, so there were, I think, 10 ways or something. One way was, if there's a difficult question you don't know. So what you say is, good question, but to understand that, first we must understand this question. And then you ask a question which you know the answer to. And spend all the time answering that question. Then move on to the next question. Or there was like, immediately showered praises on the questioner. Wonderful question. That's exactly what should be asked. This is the thing which people don't ask. I'm so glad you've asked it. Do it that for 5 minutes and move on to the next question. Or they'll say, you can be, the one last thing was, you can choose to be honest and admit that you don't know it. But don't, it says footnote, don't do it too often because they'll think you are a good person but useless. But here, actually, I have the answer. And this is a very subtle question. When we say, I am the light, which can never be objectified, but that light, that consciousness, plus an object, like a thought, like a sensation, like a physical object outside, like the body, then only we have an experience. Yeah. Consciousness plus object is equal to experience. Is this equation understandable? Consciousness plus object is equal to, you are aware, and you're aware of something. Then only you have an experience. If you remove that something, then you either will have no experience or you will have the experience of the absence of all things. That also is possible. All right. But then the question arises what he has asked. In that case, for consciousness to reveal itself, it always needs an object. Or in a more subtle way, even the absence of an object. So isn't consciousness dependent on something else? Let me put it this way. Consciousness, what does consciousness do for objects? And what do the objects do for consciousness? Use the light metaphor or analogy. So in darkness, there are many objects. You light, switch on a light. What does the light do for those objects? It illumines, it reveals those objects. What do the objects do for light? It manifests the existing light. The comet example, there's a light streaming through space between the sun and our planet. But when the comet passes through that space, then you see that that place is lit up. So the pre-existing light was manifested by the comet. But the comet was lit up by the light. So light illumines objects, but the objects manifest light. So light needs the objects need the light. Objects need light for illumination. And the light, in one sense, needs the objects to reveal itself, to manifest itself. So is consciousness like that? Then consciousness needs the universe, needs the body, needs the mind. Then only it becomes. This is the position of Sankhya. Sankhya philosophy. It says consciousness and nature, Prakriti and Purusha, they are interdependent on each other. Advaita Vedanta, I'll give two answers. One prima facie and then some deeper, subtler one. Advaita Vedanta says, true, but in our system, that which is nature, that which is object, is also consciousness. You remember that sevenfold reduction, Chinmatra Murtai? Through Maya, consciousness is appearing as its own object. Just as you, the dreamer, you appear as your own objects in your dreams. In your dreams, only you are there, but so many other people appear. So many other places appear, so many activities appear. They're all you, the subject. Similarly, consciousness appears as the object. In that case, consciousness is not dependent on anything external to itself. It seems to be an external. What it illumines is nothing but itself. It's an appearance in consciousness. And there's a lot of argument to prove this. The relevant section is called Adhyasa Bhashya. In Śaṅkaracharya's introduction to the Brahma Sūtras, there is an essay, one of Śaṅkara's master works. It is said, there he asks this question: can consciousness actually illumine objects? If objects are entirely different from consciousness, how would they interact? The light example does not hold. Light is material. These objects are material, and light can be reflected from these objects. It's matter interacting with matter. But if consciousness is not matter, then how does it even experience matter? Where will they interact? Where will they meet? It's like the same problem of mind-body dualism in the Descartesian philosophy of mind. How will two entirely different things interact? So the answer is they cannot. And yet, if they seem to interact, because it seems I'm consciousness and I'm interacting with body, mind, and world. It seems I'm interacting. I'm aware of the mind, I'm aware of the body, I'm aware of the senses, I'm interacting with the world. If consciousness seems to be interacting with the world, then that interaction is a case of superimposition, falsity. They are actually not two. There's actually only one thing. And the other thing is that same one thing appearing to be different from itself. So, Advaita Vedanta claims when consciousness and matter seem to interact, it's actually consciousness which is there and matter is an appearance in that consciousness, very much like a dream. In your dream, you say, I am there, but there are people and rocks and mountains and rivers and sky and other people. How can mind interact with rocks and mountains and sky in a dream? The answer is there are really no rocks and skies and people and other things in the dream. Only mind is there. But it appears like that and then seems to inhabit a world. Similarly, consciousness appears as its own object, and then there is no problem in principle because it's also consciousness, this world. A Chinmatra Murti, consciousness only, even if it appears to be non-conscious. Okay. This is one answer. It's a mainstream answer. But there's a subtler answer. And this I'm taking from a master who lived in Kerala in the 1940s, 50s, Atmananda Krishna Menon. At one point he says, those who think that consciousness depends upon the object for its manifestation have not understood the nature of consciousness. This is a very subtle point. It requires deep, non-dual meditation to appreciate consciousness is full in itself. Even without the so-called object, it's still clear to itself. Not that it is illumining itself. There's no other language to explain it. Sri Ramakrishna's words are there. Bodhe bodhkara. There is language breaks down, but it's clear to the enlightened one that you actually don't need objects, whether real objects or even projected objects projected by Maya. Consciousness is ever clear to itself. Yeah. On that mysterious note, we should wrap it up.
Thank you. Thank you, March. And thank all of you for coming.